wonderful having all of you at Cornerstone Institute this evening. I'll have you know that this is the very first time that we conduct a critical dialogue at this venue. So you are in fact blessing our space with your presence, and for that we deeply appreciative. You may know that Cornerstone runs a critical dialogue series, happens every first Thursday of the month. So we've had a number of critical dialogues already this year. Usually we use venues like the Artscape, District 6 Museum, Community Chest, and so on. And it's only now that we've been able to secure more space in this building for us to have what we now call an auditorium, where we can assemble bigger numbers of people like we are doing this evening. So welcome to the Rockabye Square Cornerstone campus venue, where we will be having our very first critical dialogue this evening, focusing on the state of education in South Africa. Of course, we'd like to be part of the solution. We know that there are many challenges, to put it bluntly, there are many problems, and we need to be part of finding the means, the energy, the inspiration, whatever it takes to create a better future for everyone in South Africa. And we know that it starts frequently with the quality of the education that we provide our people. And Cornerstone is deeply concerned about education. As a not-for-profit, and I emphasize not-for-profit higher education institution, we are not driven by making money as people would imagine private institutions are. We're driven by addressing human dignity and social justice. And what we want to do at Cornerstone is to create greater and greater access to higher education, especially of the kind that we provide, which previously was only the preserve of the wealthy. At Cornerstone, when you come and study here, you come into an intimate environment where you matter, we care about you, you are nurtured, you're not spoon-fed, you're treated like an adult, and you leave this institution having been exposed to a special type of learning that we believe empowers you to go out there and change the world. Our students and our alumni are testimonies to this. And if you will indulge me with just a short clip that I'd like to share with you, which give you the essence of what it is that we're about. So if we can get that clip, I'll just step down for a second.
Learn to change the world.
I chose to follow my heart.
I chose to see the bigger picture.
I chose to believe that my community can still prosper.
I chose to enrich my world and yours.
I decided to dedicate my life to a higher purpose.
I choose to listen and make a difference.
I chose to change the world.
Register now at Cornerstone Institute and learn to change the world.
Thank you for that indulgence. That should just give you a taste of what it is that we're about. We do have copies of our prospectus that we'd like you to take home with you and to share with people that you may know can benefit from coming to study at Cornerstone. So once again, thank you for being here, and we've got a very exciting program lined up for you with really esteemed speakers, panelists, and an absolutely outstanding, if I may say so, facilitator, Dr. Sharon Johnson. I say that because she's a member of staff here at Cornerstone. And she has a huge, and continues to make a huge contribution to not only education, but psychology in education, if I can put it that way. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Sharon, PhD, completed her psychology research at Stellenbosch University, focusing on the stress and burnout of teachers in high-risk schools. Her postdoctoral fellowship was at a youth care and education centre on the Cape Flats, where she was sent by the Western Cape Education Department to research the well-being of educators in traumatic contexts of the Cape Flats ganglands. Sharon has numerous papers published in peer-reviewed journals on her research in schools. She has several chapters in academic books in the USA and Europe, and is writing her own books on the restorative care of vulnerable youth in state care and trauma healing in school. Sharon lectured in the psychology faculty of Cornerstone, but she also runs her own counseling practice and consults to NGOs and government departments. Before I invite Sharon onto the stage, I'd like to celebrate this moment with a publication, forthcoming publication, that a chapter in which Sharon's work will appear very soon. She'll tell you a bit more about it. Many of you have grabbed the flyer called Lessons in Care, Triumph Over Trauma and Tribulation. In this past week, an op-ed was published in the Cape Argus, where Sharon wrote very insightfully about the situation with regard to the need for care in our schools. Immediately after this event, Sharon will be seated at the back, and I'm really encouraging you to speak to her about the book, about her work, and also to pre-order the book. And we've got a nice gift to give each one of you who do that this evening, and that is that you will get a 20% discount if you pre-order the book this evening and include your name on the list that Sharon will be keeping in terms of creating an opportunity for you to get what would generally be quite an expensive publication, but well worth having in your collection. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Dr. Sharon Johnson.
Good day, everyone. I think I have my own mic, so I don't have to speak in there. Thank you for that very illustrious introduction. I'm very pleased to be here chairing this committee of people with loads of experience in education in South Africa. And I'm sure if I had to add up all the combined years of the audience, I'm sure many of you have also a lot of experience to contribute towards this discussion, and please ask questions afterwards, after we've all done our presentations. So I'm going to start very briefly, just to expand a little bit on my work for the Department of Education. At the moment, I am working in schools. I'm seeing about 100 teachers a week, introducing the concept of circles of care, which is the idea that teachers can sit in circles and discuss their problems and have a more caring approach in the schools to their difficulties. And I'm developing, because there's nothing like it currently in psychology, a teacher trauma tool, which means that teachers can have a protocol on their desks which says if a child comes up and has been traumatized, this is what you need to do, because at the moment they have absolutely no idea. So my training in the schools at the moment is to distinguish between crisis and trauma, which a crisis is a more ongoing event which isn't of a huge magnitude, but the trauma can be relating back to child sexual abuse, the exposure to violence, and what do we do about that? Because I think the challenge for all of us is that we can't learn if we are in the survival brain. Those of you who know anything about the brain know that if we are in the survival brain, which is this part of the brain. A model has been developed in psychology. If you're in that part of the brain, you can't think straight and you can't open your book and actually learn. So all the efforts that we're making to empower teachers to be effective teachers goes to naught when the children can't think straight, that they are in their survival brain. So with the survival brain comes the emotional brain and the amygdala and the fear center, and then only after that do we get the cognitive thinking brain. And I'm sure you've heard of the expression that somebody flips their lid, and that means that you're out of your cognitive brain and you're into your emotional and physical aspects of your body. And the children that are disrupting classes are in this part of their brains. And the teachers, when I say to them, are your children traumatized? They say, no, they're naughty. So it's like they don't have an understanding of why the children are coming and being naughty. They're being traumatized. And when I was at the youth care center, those problems were exacerbated because this care center, which I've written my book on, those children had dropped out of the system. Many of them were illiterate. They were coming from abuse and neglected backgrounds. There were difficulties of going into gangs. And what do we do with them? You know, the teachers can perhaps send a child out of their class and even out of their school. But the buck actually ended here. And we had to find a formula to work with these children because there was nowhere else to send them. And basically what happened at the youth care center was I taught the teachers that these children were little geniuses, that they had survived extreme conditions of trauma and they were still standing. And the fact that they would come into the class and jump out of a window or not be able to even sit in a chair meant that that was their adaptive process to survive, and how are we now going to engage with that? So the lessons of care in my book, it's not an easy book to have written because we are working with the extreme behaviors of these children. But I think there are lessons for all of us in more mainstream schools that we don't want the children to end up in that youth care center. We want them to stay in the system, to get some kind of qualification, to be able to go out and be functioning adults in a civil society. So that is our challenge, I think, here today. The state of education in South Africa is that there is a lot of trauma in the schools. When I was I'm working at 2 schools in Manenberg at the moment, and the bullets are flying outside the window while I'm in that classroom. So I'm in the trenches with those teachers. And I said to them, can any of you focus on what I'm saying? And they said no. So well, welcome to the world of the learners. So I believe that a big focus in education in South Africa is to try and heal the traumatized children, to give the educators the skills with a teacher trauma tool, which is on their desk, together with the psychological first aid, which we want to use with the crisis that is also going on, and to start equipping them. And they might say, well, I don't want to become a psychologist. I'm already a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm everything else, I'm a parent. Do I have to now become a psychologist? And I say to them, I'm not teaching you to become a psychologist. I'm just giving you some basic human-to-human interaction skills that can ensure that we do no more harm in our classrooms. Because if you are hitting, which corporal punishment is no longer obviously in place, it's been replaced with shouting. The same part of the brain lights up whether you are hitting a child or shouting at a child. So we have no effective discipline measures. But if we start to consider to care for the children, I say to the teachers, how many of you say that you love your children? And they all look at me, and one guy says, well, I said that about 5 years ago and the children just laughed at me. So, okay, it's going to be tough. They're not used to care. Another thing that I try to teach the teachers is to have positive interaction between the learners, positive touch. Although ethically, obviously, teachers are not meant to touch learners. But can we do high fives or an elbow touch or a fist touch, that learners start to actually touch each other and to learn safe touch from each other and from the teacher. And I challenged the educators and said, go into the classroom and ask the learners to give each other a positive stroke, what we call in transactional analysis. And they came back the next day, because I'm working over 4 weeks in each school, and they said, no, well, that didn't work. So I said, well, what do you mean? They didn't understand what a compliment was. they couldn't turn to the child next to them and say something that was positive because they never heard anything positive themselves. So the teacher actually had to try and teach what a positive affirmation is in the classroom because that was an unknown concept. So we have a lot of social ills out there where the children are in very poor social conditions and they are coming to schools ill-equipped to cope with what is required of them. But there's been research undertaken on the Cape Flats in South Africa saying that 60% of the performance of the child is their environment and their parents and their intellectual ability. 30% of that performance is the teacher, what they give to those learners, and 10% is the school. So out of 100%, we have got, what have we got? 40% of what we can do in schools to help those learners. So the teachers are sometimes quite amazed by that statistic, that they have such a powerful influence. And I'm sure you've heard the fact that it only takes one positive influence in the life of a child to turn their life around. They only need to have one person that can inspire and direct them. So my job is to go into schools and inspire teachers who are feeling burnt out. When I started my research, the burnout levels were 65% in general schools. That has now risen to 80%. When I ask teachers, do you feel burnt out, which is emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a feeling of unmet needs, which interestingly enough has just been classified as a mental disorder. Before the doctors, if you went and said, I've got burnt out, they didn't consider you to be sick. But it has relegated itself to actually you need time off, you have problems. And it's that lack of empathy when you are physically exhausted and emotionally exhausted that you cannot actually interact with these traumatized learners who need the empathy. So we need to start with the inward healing of the teachers, that they can feel more capable of helping the learners. We need to start helping learners to be no more traumatized in the classroom than the other trauma that they've had in their communities. And then I think as a society, we need to start embracing these teachers and recognizing the difficulties that they are having and the challenges out there, and seeing how we can create more caring communities. Because clearly sending in the army and the police is just meeting violence with violence, and that is not the answer. So that is just a small glimpse of my work in the schools, and I'm hoping by the beginning of next year to write my second book, which will be on the teacher trauma tool, to investigate how we can create safety in schools where safety is not an obvious element. Safety in the body, safety in the emotions, and safety in the mind, not only for the learners but also the teachers. That is the essence of helping our classrooms as far as I'm concerned. So that's enough from me. We can talk a little bit further and you can ask questions if you like. But I'd like to introduce John Volmick, who is one of our next esteemed guest and speaker, and he's going to give a more broader picture of the state of education in South Africa, which is the title of this dialogue. So John has served for 4 years, from 2006 to 2010, as the chairperson of Umaluzi Council, and he's serving a third term as chair of council. In 2016, he served as interim vice chancellor of the Durban University of Technology, and he was the acting vice chancellor at CPUT in 2017. He currently serves as the president of Cornerstone Institute. So would you like to welcome John up, please?
Good afternoon. I am very honored to be here. And as my custom is, I didn't come here to lecture to you. So we are here to exchange views. I believe that always I remind myself, none of us are as smart as all of us. So I think this applies to today as well. There's a couple of things I want to say by way of introduction. Firstly, education in a democracy is complex. And when we deal with complexity, we have to accept that there may not be a solution, one singular solution. However, there are always choices. So instead of trying to find solutions, that's the time we fight with each other. Because this one believes that their little way of doing things is the only way, and somebody else believes the opposite. So what we need to do is, in order to make the right choices, we need to engage openly and honestly with the situation. When you do that, you identify the core issues. Once you understand these are the 10 core issues, you can say, given where I am, I can do number 2 and number 6 and number 8. That's it. Somebody else can do the others. And that's the way we can work together. So, nobody likes to work with complexity. Thanks, Sharon. Okay, I'll see how it goes. We all like to work with simplicity. But, if you take into account that there are 2 kinds of simplicity. So, given the complexity of education, if you want simplicity, you can't do it at the near side of complexity. You have to engage with the complexity so that you get on the far side. So this side I call simplistic. And if you ever wanted to see something that was simplistic, it was apartheid. It never engaged with the complexity of this country. So it came up with a few stupid laws that were never sustainable. It was simplistic. Anyway, Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, said that good leaders have the courage to face brutal facts. You look the facts in the face. Don't try and find excuses for it. You confront it. Those are the facts, whether it's personal or collective. Now, unfortunately, we live in a country where people seem to believe that it is better to be negative than to be positive. Now, once you believe that, we replace brutal facts with brutal myths, and we embrace these things as if they are facts. And education is replete with those examples. Just yesterday, I was reading some article about the grade 9 debacle. And I won't mention the author just in case she's in the audience. But, here's an example. In the article, it says, South Africa is last in math education in the world. Now, you know how many countries there are in the world? And only 40 countries participate in those studies at any one time. And even if we are number 40, which we're not, doesn't mean we're the bottom of the world. Yeah? So it's that kind of national psyche that we need to change. So let me quickly go through some challenges. Okay, I've got some challenges up here. The first, as you can see, the basic problem is that we're a high cost and a low performing education system. That's a fact. I've just come back from Ethiopia, and if you want to know how many kids should be at school, you take a quarter of the population. So we have 50 million, so 50 odd, so we've got 12 to 13 million kids at school. So that's about right. Ethiopia has 110 million, and therefore they have 30 million people at school. And by the way, just in case I forget, only 6% of those learners go to high school. Only 6%. And they're quite happy with that. And I'll come back to that later. So I want to say the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what have we achieved in the last 25 years? That to me is very important. And you may say, well, 25 years is not long enough given the devastating legacy of apartheid. But this week I was sitting, lost in admiration, at the celebration, the 70th celebration of the People's Republic of China. And I sat there and realized that when they established, when they founded the People's Republic of China in 1949, we had a nationalist government here. So it's 70 years and 70 years. And so if you look at what happened there, and I'm not going to belabor the point because I have very limited time to get through what I want to say, is that the first 30 years of those 70 years in China, nothing happened. They had undergone extreme difficulties, including famine and all kinds of other poverty problems. Yet, after Mao died, after the period of struggle, they focused on getting the education system right. So for the last 40 years, China focused on that. They then opened up the economy. They joined the World Trade Organization. And today, as we speak, China, the People's Republic of China, is arguably one or two, number one and number two, economic power in the world in 40 years. Now, we've been going for 25 years. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, maybe I should just, to be fair, say, let's go back to 1949. So we had the 1953 Bantu Education Act. And that act was not meant to build, it was meant to destroy the education system that were run by the provinces and by missionaries and so on. And it wanted to bring black education under direct state control. And I can go on, talk about that. Driven by the Afrikaner nationalist ideology. Now, that was part of a bigger strategy. Of course, we know that by 1960s, the Colored Persons Education Act was introduced, and 1963, the Indian Education Act of 1965. Yeah. And then came the Soweto Uprising. Then came the mass democratic movement, which saw the last vestiges of apartheid education as we entered the democratic era. And so, you know, when I was more or less born just after apartheid. So I grew up in that period. And when I was 25, we had the Soweto Uprising. And the point that I want to make, like China, the nationalists, as destructive as it was, apartheid education needed only 30 years to complete its project. 30 years. And I'm not applauding that. I'm just simply saying, how did they do that? And so we've been going for 25 years. What have we achieved? And that's the state of education that we want to talk about. But you will tell me when my 15 minutes are up.
It's up.
It's up. But, you know, all we've been doing is celebrating the chaos of a new beginning. Yeah. And so we've been generating all kinds of papers, green papers, turning to white papers, and policy papers. And the conventional signposts were washed away, and we're uncharted waters. And so, with your permission, I just want to show the one Nick Paul slide, which I like, which is the second point, and I'll stop with that, because the others are fairly obvious. But this one, it's got to do with the two education realities. You see the education for the 20% at the top and the 80% at the bottom. And the idea is always mooted that you can get people from this bottom to participate in the 10% of high economic activity. I think that clearly, if I had the time to talk about school dropout and so on, and maybe in question time I can still do that, you will notice that it's been highly unsuccessful, that model. I don't believe in that model anymore. I think we're misleading people by making them believe that we can get everybody, this 80%, to participate at the top. And I've been engaging with people at UWC around this issue. And I think that one of the thoughts that come out of those discussions that I'm having is that we should prepare our learners to participate in the second or informal economy, not only in the first economy, which is that part at the top. And the argument is that the first economy, the formal economy, has not created any significant jobs in the past 20 years. It has created shareholder value for whites and for a few blacks, elite. And that came at the expense of the greater common good. So instead of thinking in terms of economic transformation, our education system needs some readjustment so that instead of economic transformation, we talk about economic integration, and that simply means we take the expertise of the formal economy and connect that with the know-how in the informal economy, and so we can co-create between the two worlds sustainable solutions for poverty and inequality and unemployment at the point where it exists, and not try and find relief in that top 10%. That may be controversial, but I've become convinced over time that we need to do that. And I think our TVET colleges and even the grade 9 exit point, which I'm sure you would like to hear my views on, it can help in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to take his seat? So there will be time for you to ask John some questions afterwards when we've listened to all the speakers. So I'd like to next invite Jean September, who currently works for the British Council, where she is the Deputy Director, South Africa, based in Cape Town. She is the strategic lead in developing and overseeing the education and society portfolio, a member of the Child Protection Team, and an active contributor to the regional and global equality, diversity and inclusion EDI agenda. Okay, Jean, would you like to come up? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I actually want to start by saying that when I think of education, and I see quite a number of colleagues and comrades sitting in the audience here who I haven't seen for a very long time, is that, the glass is always not half empty, but half full. So with all the challenges that we face in the South African education system, I think one needs to keep that hope alive, because if there's no longer any hope, then, you know, we're not going to find solutions to any of the challenges that we have. So working for a international organization like the British Council affords me the opportunity to actually to look at alternatives and see how, and being an educator myself for very many years, you may be out of the classroom, but the classroom is always in your head. It stays there. It doesn't matter what kind of work you do or where you are, that is on your shoulder all the time. So given an opportunity in the work that I do to influence what's happening in school education, and also higher education and the TVET sector, in school education, when I started in the British Council, there was no school program at all. So over the years, we've developed one, and we've created a program called Connecting Classrooms. And it's a global education program where we work in about sort of 40 countries around the world. But more specifically, what I work with are the teams in sub-Saharan Africa. We have offices in about 23 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and I try to look at what happens in education in those countries, and Connecting Classrooms is one of our schools program, probably the biggest one, which we do with the Department for International Development, DFID, where we work with teachers, mainly in classroom practice, as well as with principals in another program where we promote instructional leadership. Given that principals are responsible for teaching and learning at their particular schools, and we know what the history of that is. Quite a lot of the principals that we do know sit in their offices. They do a lot of the admin work, make sure that the finances are okay at the school, that everybody's in the classes, but they don't actually go into the classrooms. They don't engage. So we've started a program around that. So this year, we've decided to take 50 schools and take the principals who've all agreed to go through the program of instructional leadership with us, where they become responsible for teaching and learning in their schools and what role they need to play. It's not a new requirement. That requirement has always been there, but it's just never been practiced. And in each of those schools, we are taking the teachers through a set of core skills. Now, at the end of the day, it's the kids in the classrooms who matter. And if we want to prepare them to be citizens of the world, we want them to be prosperous, we want them to have jobs, we want them to have lives that they can imagine and be creative around as well. We need to work with our teachers specifically, and our teachers are going to lead the kids into that. So quite a lot of our work is working with teachers and looking at continuous professional development for teachers. So the 6 core skills, we go through that with them. So it's a 2-day workshop. And then the teachers go away for a period of 12 to 14 weeks where they practice a particular core skill, like, for example, critical thinking and problem solving. Questioning is one of those. How do you question in the classroom? How do you begin to change your practice? And then they come back for 1 day after 12 weeks where they share what it is that they've done. And over the past sort of 3 years, they've created this community of practice where schools who are close to each other, the teachers meet, etc. And we think that is, we're taking it in small bites, and we can't change the system overnight. So we work in these pockets, and hopefully next year we will take another 50 schools. So that's the one program that we're running. And the other one is the international partnerships, which we've been doing for the past 12 years, where we've been taking teachers and partnering them with teachers in other countries, in sub-Saharan Africa, Uganda, Mozambique, West Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa, where there's something else that they can look for, you know, go and see what's happening in another country. And they then develop a project with that particular school for a period of 3 years. And they concentrate mainly on the SDG goals. Which also gives them an alternative. You know, they can look at something, and quite a lot of the teachers come back from their visits from sub-Saharan African countries, and they say, we will never complain again. But that's soon forgotten. After a month, they're back to complaining. But I think it just gives them also another view. We also take students with, and this was a couple of years ago, we were at primary schools going over to a school in, I think it was in Cardiff. And these 10 and 11-year-olds had the time of their life going to, I mean, the first time even just going to the airport for one, and getting on a plane and going somewhere where they've never been before. And there was one little boy who came back and reported, and he says, you know what, he spent 5 days in a class in a school in Cardiff, and the teacher left the room, and there was absolute mayhem in the room. Kids were running on the desks, they were fighting, they were doing all sorts of things, but there was one little boy standing at the door, and he was looking out for when the teacher comes. So, of course, he calls and he says, well, get back, and they all get back and they start working. The teacher obviously heard them down the hall, and she came back and she said, you know, okay, who was responsible? What happened here when I was? And none of the kids, and one little boy put his hand up and said, we misbehaved a little bit. I was running on the desk. And the others started to own up. But this little boy who comes from the school in Mannenberg said they all owned up, but the teacher didn't hit any of them. So he got up and he says, you know what? If this was in my class in Mannenberg, we would all have gotten 5 of the best. And here, the teacher had given them a task to do in terms of a little project, which was the punishment. And they all stayed for half an hour after school, and they did that. So he came back and he told this to the school where he comes from in an assembly one morning. The teachers were embarrassed when this boy told the story. But what the teachers didn't realize, that there's a resource at their school which can actually help them look at alternatives. And this little boy became the person who led those discussions at the school. Once we had gone back to the staff and spoke to them and said, you know, make use of your students So I think it's those little stories that gives one hope, you know, that how are we as teachers actually letting the students at school, whether at primary schools or whether at secondary schools, contribute in a meaningful way to some of the change that happens in the school. So I firmly believe, together with working with the Department of Basic Education, working also with the department here in this province, the Western Cape Education Department. Haroon is sitting here as well. We just completed last week a 4-day workshop where we're looking at reading strategies and reading for meaning workshops that we're going to do with teachers, and hopefully roll that out to the other provinces as well. We may be in a crisis, but I don't think we can throw our hands up and say, you know, we can't do anything. I think there's a lot of work to do, and maybe there should be a national campaign. Sean, sitting here in front today, spoke about, you know, we all need to reboot. We all need to get our tackies back on again, and not take to the streets, but look at what we can do in our own personal capacity in the schools in South Africa. So I am very hopeful about it, but I think we need to roll our sleeves up a little bit more and do a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean. You gave us some inspiring thoughts of how to broaden people's experiences, not only the teachers, but also the learners, and the importance of global context and connections. So our next speaker is Rene Ferrand. She has taught in schools before transitioning to adult basic education and training, and in 2001 she relocated to the United Kingdom, where she spent the next 12 years teaching in primary schools across 5 London boroughs. During this time, she was awarded the leading teacher status, Chartered London Teacher status, and was conferred the Fellowship of the College of Teachers in 2010. She read for a master's degree in education at Brunel University in West London and is completing her research in South Africa. In 2013, she returned to South Africa to take up a position at the International School of Cape Town, where she's head of primary mathematics. She's a member of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. Rene's focus is multiple exceptionality in children, when a child experiences high learning potential alongside a special educational need because of a learning difficulty or disability. She also has a keen interest in curriculum design. She's a premier author for the Times Education Supplement. She volunteers her time training staff that work in places of safety for young children on various aspects of teaching and learning. She also volunteers her time running workshops for children in the Hangberg and Masipumalelo areas. She's currently working on content for a children's website. I don't think I need to turn over the page. That was quite a lot of information. So welcome, Rene, and we look forward to hearing your wisdom. Thank you.
This is a bit more intimidating than I had anticipated. So let me just start by saying that my context is the primary school, and I'm a very fierce advocate for primary school teachers, because I feel that we get a very raw deal in terms of education. They even call what we do on a daily basis basic. There is, let me tell you, nothing basic about teaching children that are just out of early years and just on their way to high school. There is nothing basic about what we do. So what I'd like to talk about, there are 4 areas that I'd like to talk about. And firstly, I think this is a very personal aspect that I bring to my practice. And it's something that I have developed over a course of very many years. And this is going from Groenvlei to Kriefgat to Garlandale to London and back again. Wherever I have worked, at the time I might not have been aware of what the children were experiencing or what I was experiencing, but a big part of that is trauma. And I think before we can teach children to read, to write, to calculate, we need to acknowledge, we need to identify, and we need to be aware of the trauma that that the children bring with them to the classroom, that the children carry with them and in them. So you're thinking of what's going on in their heads and what's going on in their little hearts, which makes it possibly sound quite airy-fairy, but trauma takes many forms. And this could go from the illness of a parent or a sibling or the child themselves to food insecurity, not having a place to stay, no place to call home, is a very big thing in education. And when you cannot teach a child who's worried about what is going to happen when they get home, what has just happened before they left home, and what will happen because it's the weekend, because it's my weekend with my one parent or my other parent. So being a trauma-informed practitioner, a trauma-informed teacher that works in a trauma-informed school certainly does add value to what the children take from your practice, because children come to school with the trauma. Then there is the expectation for them to read, to write, to calculate, and they might have other issues intellectually or other issues that have gone unnoticed and unremediated, as the minister at the weekend actually admitted that up until 15 there are massive gaps and they have not been remediated. So the children don't necessarily have a problem with mathematics, for example, or they don't necessarily have a problem with reading, writing, or spelling. There was just an issue that could have been addressed to show them how to do this differently. And that leads on to teacher training, current teacher training. So I'm a product of UIT. I came through the old teacher training colleges, and I don't feel that what I see with the students who come out into schools now, I don't feel that they are as aware of trauma, of a child's emotional needs as well as of their intellectual needs. So earlier on when Sharon was talking about the amygdala and different functions of the brain, in the primary school we do this very simply. And when we teach them about mindfulness, about honesty in terms of addressing their feelings and their fears before there's fight or flight, we teach them about the shape of the brain, what happens in the different parts. But the mindfulness, we teach them that when you are honest, you're asking for help, and you just are going within. You are hugging your big feelings, which seems really simplistic, but to a very troubled 8 or 9-year-old who has just seen one of his parents or her parents being beaten by the other, bullets flying, there's not enough food. When you're hugging your feelings and somebody else shows an interest in hugging you, either physically or with their words and intentions, it makes a massive difference. And it's the one place where that child feels safe enough to let go, to exhale, and to maybe listen. And I have to say maybe listen, because they listen a little bit more, they listen incrementally. They don't just sit. If you think of what we do in a primary school classroom, there's the perception that we have this image in our heads that children arrive at the door, they put their bags down, they go and sit down, take out their books, and they listen. And they are ready to learn. That's the textbook version, and that's the ideal. They come to school, there was a fight in the car. Sometimes it's just a fight between siblings. There was a fight in the car between parents, one parent maybe on the phone to the other. There were accidents along the way, violence, police sirens, all sorts of things. The puppy died, the granny's gone away. They're all sorts of things. They're all wanting to tell you this, but you need to start a maths lesson at 8 o'clock. So there are other children also ready to learn, and it's a fine line to walk as a teacher, to honor the responsibility to all the children that are in front of you, but there's also acknowledging just that one child, because sometimes, most times, you are the only friendly face that child will see for the day. You are the only person who is going to use that child's name for the day. And when that child leaves you on a Friday, he or she might not hear his or her name in a warm, positive, reassuring way till Monday. And if you are absent, that cover teacher is not going to get a lot of cooperation. So being trauma-informed and being aware of a child's heart and mind and how to hug the big feelings and encouraging that child to hug those big feelings goes a long way to opening up a path where you are able to get through to that child, where they understand the concept of numbers getting bigger and smaller and verbs and adjectives and so on. Then finally, it's just looking at the challenges that we face when we are expecting children to present in a certain way. So if a child doesn't write beautifully, can't sit up, has no core strength, as many children the PlayStation and Xbox generation have, they've got a lot of skill here, and they have no core strength because safety reasons, parents working, they cannot sit still for a very long time. Teachers and other people around the child need to understand that you're not going to get a child to sit still. If the child cannot sit still, you don't get them to sit still by instructing them to sit still. They need to move more. So classrooms need to be very busy places. And sometimes they can be quite annoying places for a teacher, because you got one kid bouncing up and down, some other one's walking around, something else is going, and then you just need to call it all back. So it does become an ongoing learning path that we need to be following. We need to be learning about all those dysfunctions that children have: dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, lack of attention, ADHD, inattention, and all of those are very different. But if we understand how to get the same result from a child in a different way, teaching can be very rewarding, tiring, frustrating while you're going, but it can be very rewarding. And this all links to a curriculum that needs to be relevant to the context in which the child lives, and relevant to creating a global citizen from where you are in that school with that child. Global citizenship does not necessarily revolve around a school having technology and all the best resources. Yes, it helps, but we are an innovative bunch. We are a creative bunch, most of us, and with enough hard work and collaboration, because what has happened over time, just the way life has turned out for many of us, there are no communities of teachers where we can share ideas, we can share resources, we can just offload, because teachers speak a special language don't we? And so I think where we understand each other, where we understand the children and the context, helps us to bring out the best in every child, because we can only change the world one child at a time. So, yes, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Rene. I'm pleased to see that you share my passion about trauma in the schools and its importance, and also the importance of the global connection. So I think we're starting to see similar themes that are developing here. Burson Lesh, who's actually got his real book and not just the virtual book that I'm promoting, has taught for 8 years in Cape Town, and after obtaining his degree in education, he left to lecture at the Giani College of Education in Limpopo. He thrived in the college environment, where he developed more valuable teaching skills. In 2002, when colleges of education were to be closed down, he became both a facilitator at the Giani Science Center and a curriculum advisor for the Mopani district. By 2004, all his colleagues from Giani College joined him as curriculum advisors, serving 240 high schools in Mopani. For the next 3 years, they crisscrossed the district to train, monitor, and support over 500 teachers. After 11 years of working, living, and starting a family in Limpopo, Burson moved to Pretoria in 2007 to take up a post at the Department of Science and Technology in the Science and Youth Science Promotion Unit. He became a mentor to 60 undergrad students. He qualified as a certified professional resume writer and a certified professional career coach. He is a keen advisor on career development, the author of a book titled Dysfunctional Schools in South Africa, Reflections and a Turnaround Plan. So I'm very pleased to introduce Burson and to hear about his turnaround plan. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thanks, Sharon. I've got about 10 minutes, and I'm going to try and squeeze 2.5 concepts into the 10 minutes. The first topic I want to talk to about is the state of mind of our teachers. I believe our teachers are very lonely people. It's a very lonely profession in our country, and my context is those schools that I worked with in Limpopo especially. Teachers hide in their classrooms. They don't want anybody to get into their classrooms, not their colleagues, not their principals, not their curriculum advisors. They are working on their own and struggling. And this leads to various things. I believe they are disheartened. They've lost courage, they've lost self-confidence, and I actually believe they've actually walking around with a victim mentality. And in actual fact, it has become that the teacher is a spectator. The teacher is, because everybody is attacking them. Universities are doing research and saying they don't do their work. Industry saying the kids are produced are not up to scratch, etc., etc. And that means that the teachers are actually not in control of the classrooms, they're not in control of the curriculum, they're not in control of the schools. Now, that may sound very negative, but let me ask you, and I'm going to give you a short story. I think there are many teachers here. Can you just maybe with a show of hands tell me, when you were a teacher, did you ever take from home materials like a newspaper, a book, salt, sugar, potatoes, something like that for your lessons, and the school didn't know about it, you just did it as part of your professional responsibility? Can I just see with a show of hands? Now, you come from that culture of where you do that. We did that as teachers, right? Now, the world that I went to in Limpopo and those schools, it's just not there. I had a discussion with colleagues, and these are highly trained, educated people. And when I spoke, and I'm a biology teacher, about potatoes, you need 2 potatoes to do the osmosis experiment. You dig it out and you put in some salt or sugar. So, and then these people told me, no, you are getting into my budget, my home budget. And I thought, but people wake up, teaching all over the world, you need to do this thing. But, and you can't expect the school to go buy 2 potatoes and 1 teaspoon of sugar. It's impossible. So I am of the opinion that teachers are walking with this mentality, this victim mentality, where they are just suffering. They're actually lonely people. And the messages that we've heard now, and I'm going to now move to my second concept, and that is, I believe that the solution to this all lies that teachers should actually form professional organizations, professional associations. A profession you belong to in South Africa, it's the South African Council for Educators. That's only for your registration and for discipline purposes. But how many professional organizations do we have for teachers in this country? Not the unions. It's not the union. A union does its own work. That is for negotiating salaries. That's it. I'm talking about teachers getting together to share ideas, to plan together, to work together, to support one another, to motivate each other, right? And even start mentoring younger teachers in the group. Now that, I believe, is the major gap, or a gap in the system, where teachers need to get together. And one of the, yes, we are apparently known for Ubuntu, meaning working together and we live for each other, but it's not happening professionally in the teaching profession. It's only working in the union component, but not in the classroom. Otherwise, teachers are hiding and they're working alone. And these circles of care that you were talking about, that is what we need. So we are all talking the same language here. Teachers need to get together. And we need Ubuntu for professional development. We must be together. And then there's a modern concept, well, it's been around since the 1930s, but it's called a mastermind, where people get together and there's a leader, and the group could be between 10, 20 people, and they meet regularly. But then once a while, a member of the group, each member in the group of a mastermind, they say he or she is in the hot seat. And at that time, that person can now share with the group and say, this is my issues in my profession. And for a teacher, it would be my classroom. These are my issues. And then the collective wisdom of the group can then be given to assist that teacher. And these are the ideas that we need to promote, that teachers cannot continue working alone, trying their utmost. They go to workshops, they go back, and they just don't change. They don't adopt new methods of improving things. So working together for mutual benefit, that is what it's all about. Earlier today, Jean was talking about how teachers were in the 90s here in the Cape Flats. Teachers got together and shared ideas on a Saturday. I was part of it in the biology group, where we changed the curriculum. We looked at the book, but we did our own thing. We interpreted the curriculum and we did things to change the realities for the kids that we were teaching. So that's my second thought. And my last thought that I want to get to you or share with you is a very neglected topic in the schooling sector is new teachers. How do new teachers get into the profession? This is a big worrying factor, because you can't expect this is the reality, a 22-year-old to start his teaching career and teach. In my time, it was 3 subjects, so 3 topics. These days, probably 5. 5, you must prepare 5 different lessons every day. So I believe that a proper internship is needed. That teachers from college, university, when they come, should be given 3 months and say, sit down and do your preparation. Write out all those lessons. Get them all organized so that when you walk into that school in January, you have your materials ready. And then you can get down to business, because there are so many other issues that can distract you, that there's the sports here and this and that and other issues. But your curriculum, your materials already developed, your learner material, your teaching material. And that, I believe, is one of the ideas that I have also in my book that I share with the community tonight and in the country. So those are my thoughts. And yeah, closing thought, there is hope. We need a shake-up. The system needs a rebooting. That is the very word that I used, a rebooting of the system. Some radical thoughts about how to reboot the system, but rebooting is needed. I thank you.
Thank you, Ursula. I think what has become very evident is we all have a passion for the teaching profession, and we believe in the teachers. When I go into the schools, I believe in those teachers, that they are the heroes, actually, and that they are not getting the recognition and the support that they need. And it's been interesting that every person is trying to support the teachers here, rather than to just blame them for perhaps the state of the art of education. So, sorry. Take it away. I think it's your turn to say something. You've been sitting here very patiently. I'm sure you have many views and opinions about what we have talked about here, and there's going to be a roving mic, and I really ask you to address whichever panelist you feel has spoken about a matter that's close to your heart, and please, let's open up the floor to what you feel needs to be discussed here. Thank you. Is somebody taking a roving mic around? Yes, there's the roving mic there. So please put up your hand if you would like to address one of the panelists. Okay. Well, I'm not quite sure how we're going to work it, but would you like to start? Then we'll move round. Oh.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Peter van Alphen. I'm from Center for Creative Education. I'm very happy to hear all this discussion around trauma and children are not ready to learn. And for the approach that we are part of, we are really concerned about the emotional well-being of children. So when a child goes into a classroom, the teacher's main concern is intellectual development. And actually, intellectual development can never be divorced from emotional development.
Sorry, can you stand, please? I must just ask you to stand. Thank you.
So intellectual development can never be
and perhaps
divorced.
Look at the camera. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Intellectual development can never be divorced from emotional development. Now, the one wonderful way of doing the two together, apart from the teacher's relationship to the children is hugely important. It needs to be a positive, loving, caring kind of relationship. But apart from that, when a teacher starts to use the arts in the classroom, we have undervalued the arts hugely in the last century and but more, that if a child is painting or drawing or reciting a poem or engaged in kind of dramatic, something dramatic, then the emotional side of the child is engaged. And the learning with the head and the feeling with the heart are now joined together. And so a creative approach that teachers need to have will do a huge amount to start the healing process for our children.
Thank you. Apparently you don't have to look at the camera, so don't worry about that. Would anybody in the panel like to talk about the creative side of teaching and the challenges? Perhaps, for example, in Mannenberg, I was in a primary school where grade 5 there were 53 learners in the class, with a teacher assistant, and apparently another assistant paid by the council, which was quite interesting. And this was a non-fee paying school. So I'm just wondering about the practicalities of more art-directed work with such big numbers. You do have 3 teachers, which is perhaps helpful, but does anybody here have any experience of... Sorry?
Let's take 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. We're going to take 3 or 4 questions and then we will answer those. Fine. Anybody else who'd like to speak?
Hi, good evening. My name is Nikki. I'm an auxiliary social worker. I would like to ask a question. Everybody mentioned trauma and kids and dysfunctional and the special kids. For one special needs kids, we also sort of, it's misdiagnosed, especially in schools, is our drug addict children, where people say it's behavioral and it's not medical. And it becomes a confusion, and teachers are not equipped to identify if it's a behavioral problem or just drug addiction, and they don't to distinguish between the two. Just how can we, especially in our Cape, that it's very predominant that these things are happening now, and within social development it became, they only noticed it now, it's been happening for a while, and it's like our government don't see the seed, they only see the bigger fruit is there, that there's a problem, and they don't interact with that, because now you have problems with teachers not identifying, and kids get shifted to the wrong places. To special needs schools, we don't really, teachers they are not even trained for that. So what advice is there for us working on the trenches as well to deal with those type of things, and to equip parents how to deal, because there's also not enough resources for those kind of kids as well, or special needs kids resources, schools as well.
Thank you.
Good evening to the panel. In the context of trauma, there was a learner who did not hand in any assessments, and somehow I begged so many people, this guy, please try to find him. They got him, and when he came down into the school crying, and I was wondering why is he crying, and his mother was with him. And when they got near, right in front of my face, I was traumatized to see the mother having a blue eye. And I mean, that was her state, which happened at home. I feel that I was also traumatized, so who was there to assist me? I mean, I'm a machine, or, I've got feelings as a human being. And then I found that the principal, it's as if she's desensitized to the social circumstances, and because she appears to be able to handle it, she is fit for the job, and so many others, and previously the principal, apparently he passed away. I mean, and just normal street words says that he was stressed because of. So my question, what is there for the teachers, or is the real devil not the circuit manager sitting in the principal's office all day? He gives instructions to the principal. It comes to break, you think it's a break, when break is done, and then we've got a meeting. We've got to listen to something. We've got to do it. And we supposedly must make changes. I don't know what the changes is. So we being trained every day. Every morning we listen to the term plan. And so the psychology is, am I going to get this done? So at the end, when you come to the end of the term, as if it's a competition, are you done with your work already? Did you do this already? Is that done? So I feel it's a humdrum of instructions. So where am I going to get time for the arts? Because that's not relevant to what we must do. Where am I going to get time for psychology, for sessions, or for implementing something different or new? Because of the deadlines. And to be honest to you, twice in my dreams, I had dreams of not handing in my work on time. And with that, you speak about the lack of self-confidence. I mean, there was one teacher that others went to his house to help him complete his work, and he wouldn't open the door because he was completely traumatized. So I mean, I feel that's this whole systematic doing on top of each other is another gangster or another bullet on itself, by itself, that actually touches us in the classroom, in society, and our day-to-day work, home life. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that very articulate description of what it is like to be a teacher and why you need support and why we are all sitting here today to try and help your circumstances. And I think, as Rene pointed out, we need the systemic trauma-informed movement to take more root in schools. That this is not just about a learner that is traumatized facing a teacher, it's about the entire environment of where the teacher is working, the conditions, the expectations, going right up into the Department of Education and everybody who's suffering from trauma there. So I feel that this is a whole trauma is huge, and it needs to take place at every level. It's not enough to just teach you in the classroom how to deal with that child. We have to help you too. And there are things in place like ICAS where teachers can seek help for their burnout. But I don't think it's enough, and I think teachers need to take charge with groupings, professional groupings, circles of care, more discussions, getting that depersonalization that they suffer in their classrooms alone. We need to talk to each other, and we need to share skills and help each other. So thank you for that very impassioned plea of you are exposed to secondary trauma. You are seeing the mother with the wound on her face. The vicarious trauma is when you just get compassion fatigue. The headmistress you talked about, she can't feel anymore. There's too much going on at too much of an emotional level. So I take your point about needing to bring in the arts, but it's almost like the teachers need to do the arts first just to get to a place that they can work with the arts, because they are just so burnt out and exhausted. So I'm just commenting on would the panel like to respond to any of the other questions that were asked in that round? What about, do any of you have experience with creativity and teaching the arts? There's a microphone there if you'd like to pick it up. Sorry?
No, I was going to say that we talk about the arts. We just had the international athletics. South Africa didn't get one medal. We are a country of 53 million. And a place like Cuba gets 20 medals, and the smaller countries and so on. And the education department has scrapped music, needlework. I've had kids who are not academically inclined but great with a needle, with a paintbrush and so on. But what about athletics, sport? I mean, kids used to play tennis at school. They played soccer, they played rugby, they ran. There's no athletics. I mean, and if there are athletics at school, it's not being judged properly. We don't have athletes coming through. So in a sense, the whole education department needs to rethink its strategy in terms of the whole child. It's not just about academics. It's about music, and it's it's about I gave my kids an exercise one day, and I said to them, go home. Most of them lived in Q-Town. Tell your mother to stand on the balcony and watch the sun go down, and ask her how she feels. And they thought I was mad. I probably was, because that's who I am. And they came back on the following day and they said, Miss, my mother said she's never seen the sunset. So I said, every night she's there's a balcony. Tell her to go and sit on a chair, make her a cup of tea, and let her watch the sunset. Then you ask her what she feels, write it down, and then I want to ask you how you feel about it. Now that's the kind of thing we don't do, because it's all about maths and physics and biology and so on. And we've lost the plot in terms of our humanity. And I think that's what the Department of Education needs to get back. It's humanity, so that we teach the whole child, not just academics. But that sport, as far as I'm concerned, is critical. We fought this government in the sporting arena. We took on the government in terms of and we all became sporting officials, starters, and so on. And that is where I think we need to go back to basics. Not primary school education is not basic education, but go back to basics and get back our humanity. And we need to address that to the Minister of Education, basic education as she calls it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that teachers need to get back to that humanity, because the students, we're trying to teach the students, and we can't teach them humanity if we don't have it ourselves.
Exactly.
So I work I work with 1-year-olds, but the teachers that I'm working with don't have a heart, and it's very difficult for me, because I'm trying to bring across that you need to teach with love. You can't be shouting at the children. You can't be doing this. You need to let them play outside. You need to do this. And they're going, why? What is the point? We were brought up like this. Why do we have to do it differently? And in South Africa is changing. We need it. We need youth to come up. We need them to rise to the occasion, because at the moment it's not possible. We're not giving them the chance to do that.
Yeah. Sure. I think what you're talking about there is intergenerational trauma, and the fact that violence and non-caring is normality. It's quite a few of the teachers say to me, when if they had a stick in the cupboard, the child would say, "Sir, get the stick, get the stick." They want the teacher to hit them. That's their reality. So where do we start with this whole caring, more creative, more compassionate approach? And how do we get that across to teachers? And in my book, At the Care Center, it took about 20 years. The psychology unit was caring. The rest of the center had very harsh discipline there. They had incarceration. The children were actually sent to cells, detention cells, and they were locked up if the teacher complained about them. And there's a section in my book where I'm talking about Professor Badruddin. He examined the youth care center's history, and prefects punished students, and at one point a prefect actually hits the finger off of a child standing in the line, getting hit by rulers. So we have a very traumatic history in South Africa with abused and neglected children, not just the justice children that needed the discipline. Everybody was shunted together, and your crime could be that you have a black mother and a white father, and you ended up at that care center and having your finger knocked off. So I think the depth of the trauma in South Africa hasn't been addressed by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and we are seeing the results of woundedness, which has come through from generations, and parents don't have the skills because that's all that they know, and we're trying to create a new way. And it took 20 or 30 years at that care center for that mentality to go through, because people would say, why must we change? It's working. Or they'd go back into the classroom, they'd learn the circle of courage, but they'd go back and do it the old way. And it has to become a trauma-informed system, that everybody is on board with care, because otherwise these pockets just continue in the classrooms and there's no real progress. Would anybody else like to comment?
I have the mic. Just saying. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackie. I am a teacher at Lavendale High School. So I am right in the middle of gangland. I enjoy it very much to be there at that school. I love my school. I love being there. And so when coming here tonight, I've been to so many discussions and forums and whatever where educational issues was discussed. I must say, this is the first time I'm coming to a forum where people are reminding me or telling me or just emphasizing that we need to acknowledge the trauma of the learners when they come to school in the morning. We talk about it like in drama style. We relate what has happened yesterday, like just yesterday, another child was killed in Lavendale Lady in the street and so on. So we talk about it in the drama style. So it's about the detail and the drama around it. But I think, with my school as it is now, we're also in the process of leadership change. I am in the fortunate position where I am in that leadership circle. So with this leadership change, I see a golden opportunity for rebooting, and I am so ready for that rebooting. So it is very encouraging for me to hear that there is a circle of care, that schools get selected. I would like to know tonight, how can my school be selected? How can my school become part of that? I would also like to know, the question that I have is, how do I access the services that have been mentioned here tonight? And how do I access it in a sustainable manner? Because we have the situation where, you know, shooting happens, children can't come to school, we go back, and then there's a psychologist from the department for one hour session. You guys seem to be okay now. We are not okay. We cannot, I've been asking, just on a spiritual level, I've been asking the universe to help me, to find ways, to find means of doing this, because I feel like so many have said here tonight that we have become disjointed from where they are at and where we are at. We are in fight and flight mode every day. And we need to get in touch with ourselves and also get in touch with them. I'm ready to reboot. I'd like to be a part of the change that comes about in this education system. I have committed myself to that. And I'm thinking that being in this circle here tonight, if each one of us, I think, can go back to where we come from with just saying, I am ready to reboot, the universe will make it possible for you tomorrow to change or to touch just one more colleague at your school. And that is how we bring the change about at our schools. So I would like to have access, please, to the services. I would like to have it in a sustainable manner, and I'm ready to reboot my school. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Rene, an ex-teacher of 23 years. In the good old struggle days, we had the slogan, the people shall govern. The people shout now, and the governors are not listening to the people. And I think that's one of the problems. I think another one of the problems are that the planners of our education, they've never spent a single year or two teaching the primary school or the high school. You went to university, He became a researcher, and now he's co-opted by the government, and he is an expert in his field. With that, we must have and get through all our assessments. 10 assessments, we must get through the assessments. Whether the child understands the work or not, we must complete the assessments because we must punch in those marks. One of the things that I loved doing, at the end of Standard 5 of grade 7, you go with me up Table Mountain. And the kids looked forward to that. He's in Standard 3, grade 5, and he hears that Lish takes the Standard 5s up Table Mountain. And the kids look forward to that. But we don't have time for that because the assessments must be done. We must complete the assessments. So I think those are some of the things that we need to address. And the last point, and this I'd like the panelists to give a thought to. Should we resurrect the old Hewitts? Yes. Because I think the lecturers taught us values. And those core values we took into the classroom. And with all due respect to the lecturers at universities who are in education faculties, with all due respect to them, I don't think that those core values that we were taught are being conveyed to the young teachers so that they become people with compassion, empathy, and sympathy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm one of those staff members from Stellenbosch University that you are speaking about. Yes, and I fully agree with what the speaker said there. I remember Jonathan Jansen, when he launched one of his books some time ago, he said that the B.Ed courses, what the universities are doing, is completely failing. So, yes, you are right. You are right. But one thing that universities and teachers and schools are failing in, Paulo Freire talks about conscientização. We are not conscientizing young teachers anymore about the political situation. Are we surprised that our schools are finding themselves in this kind of situation, what they are in? Our schools are products of the colonial and the apartheid system. We did not have a decolonizing thing in 1994. Walter McNaughton says, when transformation happens, one or two things can occur. Either the incoming new government changes completely, or they take over some of the things of the past and continue with some of the things of the past. Our education system that we had was not a decolonizing education system. We could almost expect this when the SACOS walked out of the discussion meetings. They said 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we're going to find our school sport is going to be in a mess, which it is right now. So teachers and the education department and those in power are failing us because they are not politically conscientizing young people on the root causes of why we are finding ourselves in this mess that we're in now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much to you panelists there. I was listening when you were addressing some problems teachers are facing with, but I believe what we are saying here is quite good, but the problem is bigger than that. One, the problem in education is not the curriculum and all. Fine, trauma is part of it. But the biggest problem that is there, we're sitting with a system with the caliber of teachers that are there, the new generation of teachers that are there. These teachers that are there, one, they have not been mentored. They lack mentorship. Two, the good teachers have left the system and the bad teachers came in. Why I'm saying that? While I was in the school in the KZN for more than 20 years, we were doing all the arts. We were taking a student to the river because I was a science teacher. When I have to teach about photosynthesis, I have to take student out of the classroom. But when the promotion comes into the school, they will promote a bad teacher who comes late to school because he's a union member. And then the good teachers were frustrated and left the system. Now, let us face the truth. What is happening now is what they have been cooking from 1994. Fortunately, I was there. In 1994, we told them that OBE is not going to work in South Africa. But the politicians, they implemented it. And they were on us. They used to come to my classroom. And I told them that I have 60 learners in the classroom. This thing can't work. But they implemented things that they knew very well that those things, they're not good. That is where we are now. But that trouble started in 1994. So we were frustrated and we left the system. The teachers that are there, I am telling you, one, they have no values, they have no ethics. So the good teachers, they never took care of them. They never appreciated them. The college-trained teachers, they were abandoned by the system. And now we are sitting over a time bomb. You can talk about trauma, you can talk about anything, but I'm telling you, the caliber of teachers that we have in our education system, I'm afraid in the next 10 years or 20 years to come, if I'm not in the grave that year, we'll be talking about the same problems because the politicians, they don't want to change things. They talk about things, they talk about legislation, they talk the white paper, the green paper, the yellow paper, but when you go to the practicality, you go to the classroom, you still find teachers with 60 learners, one teacher. You still find, after these 25 years of democracy, you still find teachers, schools, with no library, no paper, no machine, photocopying machine. Then what teachers are going to do? That's why teachers are stressed and traumatized. And fortunately, I'm coming from that environment. If you look at KZN, Eastern Cape and Limpopo, you will see the challenges teachers are facing with every day. So with those challenges, how can you get a good teacher who is always traumatized every day? The department is saying things, the parents are saying things, learners, they don't want to do homework, they don't want, and no one is, but when the child fails, the teacher has to write a report why that child failed. But when the child is coming late, no one cares. When the child is not doing homework, no one cares. I'm coming from an environment, I was totally frustrated. So if the Department of Education doesn't want to address the core things. If the parents, they don't want to come to the party, and then they lay all the burden on teachers. Hey, 25 years, we are still going to sit with these problems that we are talking about. We need the Department of Education, the people who are going to bring the revolution. Not people who are going to enjoy, sit and talk a lot. We don't need talkers, people who are going to talk and talk and talk. We need people who are going to bring this report that you are talking about. But at the present moment, we're sitting with people who are enjoying positions. They don't care about what is happening in schools. They don't even go to the schools and see what kind of support those schools need. So that is the problem that we are sitting in South Africa at the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdurraouf Redcliffe. I'm married to a teacher, so that's why I'm here. I was also a pupil back in the day, so I've got that experience. I was a school social worker at WCED for a short while, and so I really appreciate the talk about trauma. The ratio was 1:20,000 learners when I was a school social worker, just to give an idea of the challenges we had. And now I'm serving on the school governing body of the school where one of my children are attending. So I've got a really cool view about the education system. And I must want to say, I don't agree with the previous speaker about all these bad teachers coming in. I think there are some bad teachers that came in. To generalize it like that, I'm not supportive of that. Because I do see a lot of good teachers doing a lot of good work, especially from the SGB's point of view. I also appreciate the sports comment. One of the things I'm struggling with is, why am I paying for coaches on the SGB? Back in the day, my teacher taught me how to play soccer or volleyball, whatever it was. So those are that previous culture you were talking about there, sir. But the point I really want to come to is 1985, I was in primary school. State of emergency was called. They shut the schools down. Can you remember that? My parents, along with other parents, didn't stand for this. We went to the school and we demanded for that school to be opened. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, I attended Livingston High School, and I think I see one of my teachers or a couple of my previous teachers here. And in 1992 or 93, they can correct me on the date, there was some restructuring and they took some of our teachers, or they planned to take some of our teachers away. As a result, the school mobilized and we all went to the department in town, parents, learners, as well as teachers, and we did a toy thing. The outcome of that is some of our parents and our teachers, my mom was part of that, were actually arrested. And then later on, we met the education department again, and they didn't remove that teacher. And so the question I want to ask is, because a lot of these problems are political, as the gentleman said there, they're systemic, policy, and they're structural. The question I'm asking is, when are teachers going to reach the hut-fall threshold of where we're actually going to stand up and take on the things that is making it very difficult for us to progress in terms of education? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tiara Pathan. I'm not a teacher. I'm going to speak from my experience as a parent. I matriculated in 1992 from Garlandale. I'm a product of Bantu education, Abdurraouf. And I always tell people I think I had the best education ever. I'm sure anyone sitting in this room would agree with me. And now my partner and I have 5 kids between us, and we've gone through OBE and CAPS and the parents doing the homework. And I'm hella frustrated, and I'm fearful for my kids. So between us, it's a 20-year-old and the last Lamaki is 9. And I don't know what the state of this education is going to do for him. To the point that we've even considered homeschooling him, because I think I can teach him better. You know, I think I have more patience. In fact, I do teach him some of the maths long division methods that we used to do, and algebra and those kind of things that I can remember. But recently, in the last 2 weeks, the buzz is that our kids are going to exit at grade 9 into 3 streams: academic, vocational, and technical, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm very interested to hear what the panel has to say and what their thoughts are in terms of it. I mean, I must say I've done some of the reading, and on the I'm two-sided. It could be a very good idea. It could be great for our youth, but what if they don't take one of those pathways and they exit at grade 9, and then what? We've shortened their 12 years of education. Prof, I'm particularly interested in what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
Okay, we're starting to come to the end of the session, so I'm going to allow the panelists to comment. Thank you for your comments, and we can carry on chatting afterwards if you feel like you would like to engage more on a one-on-one basis. Yes.
Did you know that? They fail. So my husband says he's teaching a grade 9 class, 9E, that they just don't listen to him because they're going to pass at the end of the year. So within these phases, the 3, what's it again, 4 to, give it to me, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and then 10 and 11. So within 3 standards, they can only fail once, and then they get moved on. So if they fail once, they move on. So you're going to have kids in grade 12 who haven't passed since grade 6, but they move on.
Yeah.
And that is the matric results that people brag about. You see? So in a sense, there's that too. And there are many more issues which we can raise here tonight. But I think it was a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to start, John? Thank you.
So maybe I should start with the questions at the end. But let me just say that I agree that with some of the speakers that we need to be able to speak, we need to earn the right to speak about what's happening in our schools. I spent 5 years before I went overseas as a teacher in the classroom, both in Belgravia, where I was, and Hanover Park, where I was almost killed. But so I earned my stripes in that sense. So, but I do think there's a very big difference between the public schools and the independent schools. As Umalusi, I go around handing out certificates to the independent schools, of which there are 2,000 or so. But the rest of the country, public schools. And the problem with to get an accreditation from Umalusi, you need to jump through many, many hoops. You need to show that you're taking teaching and learning seriously. But if you're in a public school, you are deemed accredited. And that's a policy that I think is problematic. So they can do whatever they want. I was also head of NIDU. In other words, I was the Inspector General. The last time there was an inspector in the class in this country was 1989. Since 1989 till now, there's been no supervision, no accountability. I'm just checking my impulse to go on about that. So let me jump to your question about the grade 9, because I have to give a panel. You know, I have to say this because you'll find out I've got to go to a function now, and it's for me very sad that my daughter, my oldest daughter, with her child and her husband, I'm going to a function now where they're saying goodbye to this country. And as much as I want to stop them, what do I have to offer? They're going back to Ithaca, New York, upstate New York, where I lived for 10 years. I won't leave here. But they're Americans. They just took their passport and left. But the problem is that the National Senior Certificate or the Matric Certificate is it's a whole qualification. What that means, and I'm coming to this grade 9 issue, what that means, you can spend 11 years at school and 9 months. And if you drop out, you get 0, nothing. That's a problem. So, and even if you write the exam, 720,000 will write this year. And even if 80% passes, there's still 150,000 that walk with nothing. And they are discouraged, they won't go back. So it is one argument to say, should we not get them something to fall back on? Well, let me just say this, my sister went through JC and then from there she went, there are a lot of people that went through to JC. Did we speak about that as lowering standards? You remember the JC? Yeah. So we are not saying that the JC will replace the SC, right? So what I'm saying is, I had slides here, but I didn't have time to show you. Those people that are not in education, not in training, not in employment, is 3 million. And those are the people that create problems in our social fabric. Because they feel worthless, they don't have anything to show. So that's one argument. Of course, I can argue the other way as well. But I'm just putting on the table reasons why I believe there's merit in considering an exit. Now, maybe the minister didn't communicate this properly. So you try to explain the phases. So there are 4 phases. So the foundation phase, the intermediate phase, the senior phase. That's the end of the compulsory education. Then you can go to further education, which is not compulsory. And then you can do grades 10, 11, and 12. That's FET phase. So at each phase you exit. So the exit, the grade 9 exit, is the exit of the senior phase. That's all it is. It's not the exit out of the school system. And that's where teachers like yourself and others must educate people so that you just have a marker that you've achieved these outcomes at this point. And you can show that through a systemic assessment, which is called the GEC. By the way, they will do it. Umalusi won't do that. Umalusi does the senior certificate. But they will do it with online instant marking, pre-moderated papers. So it will be online, just a normal assessment. I can tell you, running an exam in this country for 1 year, if I ask you to guess how much it costs, we don't pay for it, Umalusi doesn't pay for it. To run an exam is 5.6 billion. 5.6 billion rand for 1 year with the supplementary exam. So I think that I am not completing my argument with this, but all I'm saying is I see a lot of merit in taking the grade 9. I think it's just poorly communicated, and it's not the issue of leaving the school. You're exiting the senior phase. You're exiting, and then you have a choice. And teachers like yourselves must begin to say, now you have a choice. You can go academic, you can go vocational, you can go technical. But you need a grade 9 to do that. Well, why not? Excuse me? But why would you want to go overseas? That is not what is being said. No, I think you must. You see, you're buying into a narrative that's not correct, and I don't have time to correct you right now. So I think we'll just leave it like that.
Okay, thank you.
You know, as I sit here, I'm thinking about when last have we ever had a gathering of teachers and people interested in education talking about education. And I don't think we've had a gathering like this in many, many years, where we can actually share our own thoughts with each other, and maybe to take away with us in the 70s, the 80s, well, even the 60s, the 90s, there was a lot of teacher agency in this country. And the question I want to leave everybody with is, what's happened to that agency? And I saw glimmers of it here today. The woman who spoke here was a teacher, and the other one who spoke there as well. How do you galvanize the kind of things that you were talking about that affects you in the classroom now? So I think quite a number of us sitting here aren't in the classroom anymore, and it definitely has changed. The classroom is a different place now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think we need to acknowledge it. What does that agency look like? What is it as a young teacher that you need in order to do your job even better in the classroom? And we need to hear more of that voice. So I'm really grateful that some of the young teachers spoke out as well.
I'm still really passionate about the fact that primary school education informs, supports and underpins that age 15 exit, not into the real world but into other forms of training. And if we don't get it right from the day the child starts school at whatever age they are, they will have or continue to have the deficits, the dysfunctions, the low self-esteem, and the poverty of aspiration. Because with all of that, you do think, why bother? So there's poverty of aspiration, as well as other types of poverty and the social degradation that comes with that. And I think that we need to move away from I'm a prolific Facebooker and Instagrammer, so we need to move away from the hashtags. That 21st century learning is more than just a hashtag. It is the world that we are going to inhabit. It is the world that we are currently inhabiting. If we don't have a vision for what the world needs to look like and impart that to the children and offer them choices in terms of behavior, in terms of ethics and so on, we will be stuck with the kind of moral decline that we currently are faced with. So I would like to possibly speak to Noel about keeping the dialogue, keeping the discussion going, because this is very, very inspiring, it's very encouraging, and I do think that teachers need to share. We don't share often enough, and that's not necessarily born out of selfishness, it's life. And I think if we could make the time here today and keep this going, good things will come from that. But I am here to fight the primary school cause, not the basic education cause. Thank you.
Just two closing thoughts. I love the concept of this whole child development and the mentioning that we've lost humanity in teaching. The point is that many learners in the schooling system require, need sport, music, arts, debates, and these things to actually give them confidence. And when they start excelling in these other issues, their schoolwork will benefit, and it's that confidence that we need to get. And so that's my one point. And the other point I want to make, I also disagree with the concept that we have weak or bad teachers, or lazy and stupid teachers, which the research is saying. I really believe our teachers maybe are not the most sophisticated people, but they have the drive. They just need assistance, and they need to be given a platform where they can take control back. Take control of themselves, of their classrooms, of their schools and their profession. At the moment they are spectators, and they need to get that back, that agency that Jean is talking about. Thanks.
Sorry, I have to say something here. Can I maybe feel that we maybe retract a statement that teachers are not sophisticated? I think our teachers that we have are probably the most sophisticated people that we have, because those were the ones that conscientized us. So maybe we just said the incorrect word, I think. But just on that point, I don't think our teachers are not sophisticated.
Would you like to?
The context, that I am referring to are the teachers that as I introduced myself, I'm referring to the schools, the teachers that I worked with in Limpopo. I'm not referring to the Cape Flats and the schools that this group of people are referring to. So that was my context in a different world.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. As you spoke, I thought about schools where I'm working, where values are important, where prayers are said, where there is an emphasis on sport or arts. So some people are getting it right. I have a vision that we can start a information center for teachers. That is working in this school, and I'm doing rap in the mornings, and I'm dancing, and there are just so many wonderful things out there, and we need to be sharing it. We're a global world now. We have access to information. So after I've finished training in all these schools, I'm going to gather all this information together and try and create a platform of information where people can access this, and that you don't feel isolated in your pockets. And
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
thank you, everybody. But past 7, we booked the venue until 8. So I'm encouraging you to please stay, because there's more wine, there's drink, there's snacks. We might need to talk
Need to
to
have
each
a
other.
drink now.
But the idea is that you need to talk to each other. But let me just say a couple of things in closure. I think it's very important. A lot of what's been said here today is opinion, right? People expressing their opinion, voicing what they think about education and the system and what's going on and how we understand it. I'm asking you, and I'm appealing to you, to write your thoughts down in opinion pieces. Send your opinion pieces to us. Zinat Norton, sitting at the back, is our marketing manager. Wave at them, Zinat. Where's that? Sadisiwe? Sadisiwe is here. There she's at the back. Talk to her. She will take those opinion pieces that you write. She'll edit them, and she'll publish them in the newspaper. And your opinions will then be amplified. We'll put a megaphone to your opinions, because we have a partnership with the Argus, and the Argus prints op-eds. I really would like to invite all our panelists to take what you have contributed tonight and to write it up for us. It doesn't have to be long. Sharon's already done it. If Sharon can do it, you can do it. Write up what you shared with us tonight, and we will publish it in the Weekend Argus. We're also doing an amazing project with the Daily Voice, where we're encouraging people to highlight the issues that they deal with on a daily basis in their communities, and we know it's the underbelly of what's happening in our society, and to highlight that, to propose solutions, and then to enter a competition where they can win a bursary to come and study at Cornerstone, to come and study community development. And our community development lecturer, she's sitting over there, her name is Rene, wave at them, Rene, and encourage them to come and study community development with us. A couple of things quickly. Hot coffee. Thank you very much. Hot coffee, as we should have warned you in advance, but they've been streaming this conversation live. So it's been going out on social media globally, and they'll be able to tell us later how many people tuned in to the conversation. Oh wow, if you had gone onto our notices and seen at the bottom of the notices that the conversation is live streamed and recorded, and then we take the conversation and we broadcast it on Bush Radio. So tune in to Bush Radio on the 28th and 29th between 3 and 4, Sunday, 3 and 4, 2 and 3. 2 and 3, and then that to the 28th and 29th, we broadcast the conversation. Then Daphne, I would like to invite you on the 30th, between 2 and 3, to comment on what happened here today, live on Bush Radio. And Daphne said yes. Okay? But now, Daphne, we must make sure you get your facts straight. Okay? Because you must remember that you were in the classroom X number of years ago. So let's also make it a lively, vibrant panel where people challenge one another. Because then I think it makes for lively listenership. People want to hear different opinions. We mustn't all be the same. It's not about us being the same. Okay? It will also, the conversation has been filmed. You could see that. It's going to be put on our YouTube channel. It's on our website. And just give you one more opportunity. Everybody spoke about reclaiming agency. Janine, I need you to just come and say 1 or 2 words about our event in November, 7th, 8th, and 9th. The event is about reclaiming agency. And Janine is the organizer of that event, and she's going to give us a quick input on what that event is about. Just a quick 1 or 2 sentences.
Hi everyone. So Reclaiming Agency will take place from the evening of the 7th of November, which is also a first Thursday, through to the evening of the 9th of November. We're opening it up with a heritage tour of Bull Cup, and then we're having our opening session at Community Chest in Bree Street. On the Friday morning, which is really important for everyone sitting here, at 10:30 on the 8th of November, we are actually having a workshop, a dialogue on teachers reclaiming agency. So all of you are more than welcome to attend that session. And if you signed up, RSVP'd or signed in with the registration desk, you will all be informed of the broader program as well, which includes issues of professionalizing community development, the geopolitical landscape of Cape Town, especially the CBD, so Zonnebloem, District 6, Bullkap, and just various ways that the youth are also attempting to reclaim our agency as Cape Townians, but also as South Africans.
Good. Thank you, and we end that with a party at the Daily Music Show on the Saturday evening. So we'll send you all the information. I can't thank the panelists enough. This has been a most interesting panel, because the panel hardly spoke. The facilitators spoke a lot, but mostly the audience spoke. You were so participative, and I want to take my hat off to the panelists for once sitting, listening, and giving the audience more of an opportunity to speak. So a huge thanks to you, a huge thanks to the Cornerstone team who've done a great job of putting this event together. And people, this event closes tonight, and I'm asking you to hang around with the launch of this book. Okay? This Functional Schools in South Africa, Reflection and a Turnaround Plan. And the writer is sitting right here. Okay? And the book is going for 150 Rand. We've got credit card facility, and Person Lesh, the writer, will be sitting in that chair and signing your copy. So don't forget to get your copy and to leave tonight with a souvenir signed by one of our own local writers, putting stories out there in the way that we're asking you all to do. So, Burton will be coming back. As you heard, he worked with the Department of Science and Technology. He'll be coming back on the 30th of November. It's a Saturday. He'll be running a careers day for us here with some of his colleagues from the department, and we're inviting mainly life orientation teachers, grade 12, as well as leadership of grade 11 to come and be part of that event on the 30th of November. So, as I said, please stay, don't go home. We will hang out. Have a good night, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.